Alright, so here I have the grommet and all the wires that go through this hole in the fuel tank lid. So we've got 3 connectors here. This one here is for the fuel level, low fuel light. This one's for the fuel pump itself, and then this one here is for evap. Evap, anybody doesn't know, it basically takes the fuel vapor in the tank because it's also flammable, and it allows it up into the engine to burn it for emissions and fuel economy. That system is heavy, pointless, we don't need it. So all we need is fuel level and fuel pump. So what we're gonna do now, run these wires through there, and then I will take these and splice them into my wires that then will go up to the front in the dash. So let's get this set in there, and then we'll start splicing wires. We can take a look inside the car at the rear body harness. It is completed, aside from one ground right there where those wires are sticking out. It's going to go right at the tip of my finger. These guys here will go to this connector underneath the dash, that guy hanging right at the tip of my finger. But if we look underneath the hood through the lack of windshield, you can see the harness comes out right there, goes through the center console, and then it's just zip tied, super duper zip tied all the way to the back of the car. So we'll do a little walkthrough on it. The first breakout is at the cool suit and drink pump right there. The next breakout is at the fuel level sensor and fuel pump. The next breakout is at the fuel pump, tail light, and brake light grounds. One of those goes to a junction back there that also has the trunk switch ground in it as well. All of that kind of stuff used to be grounded right there. No need for it now. Then we travel along the inside of the car, try to keep all that stuff tucked into a corner as much as possible to protect it while we prove it out, and then I'll loom it up and get it extra loomed in areas where we might slam stuff into it. Because when we're traveling with this car, we do put stuff in the trunk. The car is kind of like a Rubbermaid container on the way to the races, so we fill it with like lawn chairs and stuff that we have to take down to the pit itself. So this car, not only is it a race car, it's a workhorse. So come back, the next breakout here, this one's interesting. I think it might be worth explaining. This is actually for fuel pump 2. So I know I've mentioned in the fuse box the relay is not there. It's so that power doesn't come back here, even though it's fused. If you don't need the power, don't send it. So that's a pretty general rule of thumb. This right here is just a little holder for a 2-pin connector, and then that is just the ground and the power for fuel pump 2. And when the PCM commands it on, power comes to this guy via the relay when the PCM commands that relay on, and then this just goes up to the ground that is up there. So then moving on, next breakout, left outer tail light. Coming along the rear of the car here, we get to the next breakout, which is the right outer tail light, and then we get up to the trunk connector, and this is just a 6-pin. So we've got rain light power, rain light ground, brake light power, tail light and brake light ground, and then we have the tail lights coming through as well as the trunk open sensor, which is this guy right here. It basically just grounds a light in the combi meter up there that will just tell us if the trunk is unhitched or unlatched. So again, many zip ties right up to the next breakout, which is the right inner tail light. Next breakout is for the rain light here. You can see that's wrapped in DR25. This is what the harness in my SI will look like. There is a breakout on my breakout. This goes to the trunk latch to just tell us that's what connects the ground to the commie meter. Then we come along, there are no more breakouts. This is the end of the harness, and it is the left inner tail light. So if you really stand back and look at this thing, starts up there, comes along right here and does a loop-de-doo, comes right around the tail light and ends there. So there's a lot of length to that light right there, but luckily they are all LED. So they're very low amperage draw and very low power required to make them work. So you can use a 22 gauge or an 18 gauge wire and make that light up just fine. So there it is. And then for this kind of thing here, I mean, this looks a little crazy as it sits. I will loom that area, but you got to make sure that you put extra in there so that, well, I have a container lid I was using as a shelf in the way there, but that is to allow for movement so that when you open the trunk lid, it doesn't get bound up. I realize I wasn't focused on it again, but yeah, that's, you don't want it to get tight and pull a corner. So like basically like pinch this. So you want to put some extra in there. And then the nice thing about that route is it doesn't touch anything no matter where the trunk is. So even when it's hanging right here, it's not touching anything. So I'll have to put some loom on that to kind of strengthen it up, and I'll run the loom inside this zip tie to make this area stronger, because that will wear on it. I mean, this car gets, I mean, just beaten to death while we're racing it. So I want to plan for that. Now for the part that I've been a little bit more hands off with, the other guys got the engine back in the car. There's a little bit of stuff I still want to do. I want to shorten these lines up. Looks like they kind of put them back in the old routing that we had them, and they did a good job putting it back. Nothing against them. What I want to do is get a better route and run this stuff right along this cover right here attached to this oil feed to the turbo, which I actually have something that'll make that a little longer right here, so this isn't pulled quite as tight. Because yeah, it looks like there's a corner right there. I gotta fix that. So I've got to shorten these up so I can run them right through here, and then those go to our oil cooler. It's a full flow Mishimoto. But yeah, they got the engine put back in most of the way. I told them to leave this whole side off so that I could wire still. So looks like they did that for me. Thank you, boys. But yeah, there's a couple of things that still need tied up with this thing, like the shifter's not hooked up yet because I have the Jesus clip for that, or the bitch pin, whatever you want to call it. And then I want to get some just caps on this because that does not look very professional. And then I am going to get this fixed as well with that valve cover that is sitting right there. That'll have 2 ANs off the back up in the baffle plate, and we'll get more flow out of the crankcase, which can only make the engine last longer. But yeah, there it is, 206 wheel horsepower, 195 foot-pounds of torque. Got the big fat radiator in there. We have no thermostat. We just gutted the plate. You got to keep that plate in there if you do that. RDX injectors, I think I've already been over all this. This engine never ceases to amaze me, man. Thousands and thousands of full throttle pulls on rods that look like that, right? Like they're so small. They're smaller than my index finger. And that engine just keeps taking it. I mean, it's a beast. So I got a new downpipe and everything for it, so we can kind of straighten things up in here and make it a lot, cleaner. I would love to run the exhaust right out of the hood, but it has to clear the passenger cabin, which is really a bummer because without the rear window in it, the fumes just come in all the same. I think it would be better if we just ran them right out the hood, but that's the rules. We're following the rules, and this engine is like a cheat code. We don't have a limit on horsepower, but you do have a limit on mods. So we were thinking, okay, well, let's do a 1.8 liter B series or even a 2 liter B series, because a B20 is reliable up to a certain point, and torque is what we're looking for more than just outright power. 200 horsepower in this racing series that's cooking. And you got to maintain your reliability too, because you're racing for hours and hours. It's not all just about power. You got to make it last. And any repair costs you, a lap every sometimes a minute and a half. So you got to be really careful about how you go about making power in this series. But this engine keeps us down in B class with a turbo, which is awesome, because we were in A class, which is technically down without the turbo. But with this turbo, we race with the 2 liters. So a 1.6 liter turbo versus 2 liter NAs, that's a pretty fair fight. So we're making 206 horsepower, 195 foot-pounds, but we're making a really, really flat power band. Eric Hargett tuned this car at CIA Performance in Columbus, Ohio. No complaints. There's been nothing wrong with this tune. The only thing that could be better is if we had it in closed loop, which we didn't have a wideband. That's not his fault, but now we do. We have that sick AEM lambda meter, courtesy of Luke. Thank you, Luke. So anyway, my next steps for this car are, we have the headlight outputs, boost control solenoid, fan, corner lights, and the transponder. Transponder is what tells the track when we pass the finish line. We keep it right there because it's low to the ground, so it's actually mounted to the engine. I'm not going to put it on the engine harness. It's on the body harness, even though it's on the engine. So that's one thing you want to do. You want to keep your body harness and your engine harness separate from each other as much as possible. So anything that doesn't go on the engine stays off the engine harness. Well, this transponder, it's kind of its own situation. So it mounts to the transmission on the stopper bracket down there. So that's where it's going to go, even though it's on the body side. So basically I got to run all those wires. Really should not take long. And then I got to run one connector for this guy here, which I have to cut off of a harness. Oh, my gimbal's done for, rut-row. I'll just have to brace it with my hand, so pardon me if the phone's shaking here, but that harness right there has the C101 connector. No, it doesn't. I lied. It's over here somewhere. It's in that box over there. But anyway, that's connector C101, and it carries information to the engine and to the cluster, I guess information, meaning just analog signals. But you've got your distributor power for like your coil, then you've got your starter, and then there's let's see here, sensor grounds. There's some stuff in there for the, like this one here is a shield ground for the rear O2 sensor. I should have taken that out. I did not. I think they call it just like a logic ground. But yeah, there's, you know, your oil pressure, then your coolant temp, all that other stuff to the gauge clusters in there. So we're using most of that. There's, I think, one wire we're not using, and all of those wires are hanging right there. So basically what I got to do is get the dash in the car, pull those wires out here, see how they meet up with this guy, and then clip them to size and put that connector on there so that we can hook it up. But the rest of them are going to be DTM connectors similar to that one, these little Grace connectors like that. So yeah, oh my God. I think I've talked long enough. Sorry, this video is a lot of just working and talking. There's a lot of stuff I've had to catch you guys up on because I've just been working nonstop for months now. Yeah, right now, you know, channel's finding its place. I'm trying to get this car on the track because that's what I'm here for. That's what you're here for. So just busting away. So yeah, pardon me, just chit-chatting and talking and pacing to myself in a barn, taking a selfie video while there's probably people outside that window watching me from across the way like that guy is insane, which isn't exactly wrong, but you know, the hard work, oof, that hurt. The hard work will eventually pay off, and the same goes for anybody else out there with their project. You know, I got a bunch of friends that'll hit a tough patch in their project, and the only thing I can tell you is patience, man. It sucks, and there's a lot of hard parts in this, and it gets to be very mentally tasking as well as physically tasking. Like, my back is killing me right now. My legs are killing me, and it would be a lot easier to just give up and not be, you know, 30 minutes from home at 9 o'clock at night on a Thursday when I've got a million other things I got to do. And you know, it's easier to just give up sometimes. I'm not doing it. I want to go race this car, and I urge anybody else who's getting irritated with their build to just keep pushing through it. So, okay, guys, we'll see you next time. Thanks for hanging out with me to the end of this. I know I chatted a lot, so take care. We'll see you next time. Well, forget going home. Looks like I live here now. I can't get out the door, so this is how it ends.